The book of Judges tells us about a tough time in Israel's history. The Israelites, God's chosen people, kept breaking his rules. Because of this, their enemies were always causing them trouble. It was during this time that Samson came along, a judge, given super strength by God. Samson's story is one of great power, struggles with doing what's right, and in the end it shows us God's plan is always in motion. Born with a special promise to God, which meant he couldn't cut his hair, Samson had amazing strength. This allowed him to save the Israelites from the Philistines, who were an ongoing torment to them. His amazing feats, like killing a lion with his bare hands and carrying away the gates of Gaza, became famous stories, but Samson's life was a mix of being very strong on the outside and weak on the inside. He kept giving in to temptation, especially when it came to women. This inner struggle between what God wanted him to do and his own weaknesses is the main part of Samson's story. It teaches us that even the most talented people can make bad choices. His story reminds us that it's dangerous to give in to temptation and that it's important to stay true to what we're supposed to do. Even though he made mistakes, Samson was an important judge. He gave the Israelites hope and was a symbol of strength against their enemies. His story, even though it ends sadly, shows us that God can use anyone, even people who make mistakes, to do his work. Samson's life, with all its ups and downs, teaches us important lessons. It reminds us that God can use our weaknesses for good and that our mistakes don't mean God can't use us. The most famous part of Samson's life, and the one that shows his biggest weakness, is his relationship with Delilah. Delilah, a Philistine woman, was a big temptation for Samson. She was beautiful, but she was also tricky and manipulative. The Philistine leaders knew Samson liked women, so they offered Delilah a lot of money to find out the secret of his strength. Delilah, wanting the money, agreed to their plan. This started a chain of events that would cause Samson's downfall. Samson was so charmed by Delilah that he told her his secret, his long hair, which he wasn't allowed to cut because of his promise to God. Delilah, as she promised the Philistines, told them Samson's secret. They shaved his head while he was sleeping. This took away Samson's strength from God, leaving him weak and helpless. Samson's relationship with Delilah is a serious warning about the dangers of lust and bad relationships. He couldn't resist Delilah, even though he knew she was deceitful, and it led to his downfall. This part of the story shows us how important it is to be careful about temptation and to choose our friends wisely. Without his strength, Samson was easy for the Philistines to catch. They were afraid of him before, but now they captured him, blinded him, and made fun of him in public. They made him grind grain in a prison, which was very different from his former life as a judge and hero of Israel. The once mighty warrior, now weak and helpless, became a sad example of what happens when you don't follow God. Samson's capture and humiliation weren't just physical. They showed his spiritual state. He disobeyed God and gave in to temptation, and it cost him everything: his freedom, his dignity, and his relationship with God. But this difficult time became a time for Samson to think about what he had done and to be sorry for his sins. He started to understand how serious his actions were and how much he had betrayed God. Even though Samson made bad choices, his story doesn't end with just sadness. In prison and blind, he was brought to the Philistines' temple. They wanted to celebrate their victory over him, but they didn't realize Samson still had strength, not physical strength, but spiritual strength from being sorry for his sins and wanting to make things right with God. As the Philistines laughed at him, Samson's hair had grown back, a sign of his renewed promise to God. He asked God for strength one last time. He grabbed the two main pillars of the temple and pulled them down, destroying the temple and killing himself and the Philistines inside. Samson's life, with its good times and bad times, is often seen as a hint of Jesus Christ's coming. Samson was a hero who made mistakes, but his final act of sacrificing himself to save his people is similar to Jesus dying on the cross. Both stories show the power of faith, forgiveness, and God working through human weakness. Samson's story, even with his mistakes, points to the bigger story of salvation and the hope that even when things are bad, we can be forgiven. The story of Samson reminds us that no matter how badly we mess up, we can always be forgiven. His journey from a chosen hero to a fallen hero, and then to someone who made things right with God, shows how powerful faith and repentance are. Samson's last act wasn't just revenge, it showed the strength we get when we admit our weaknesses and turn back to God. In the end, Samson's life teaches us that our mistakes don't define who we are. It's our willingness to ask for forgiveness and try to do better that really matters. Are you ready for the next chapter? Just click here to go straight to it.